First, someone who occupies a rare place in our hearts, a sportsman who cuts across the demarcation lines that separate those people who love sport and those who hate it. As a player, his skills graced the game. As a manager, his teams adorned it. Ladies and gentlemen, Sir Matt Busby. You're the most famous man in soccer in this country, and indeed, I suppose, in the world. You were more than a manager there. You were the boss, weren't you, really?
Well,
come on,
quite
man.
a lot of people said that, yeah.
When you look back, do you think that there was any part of it that caused you to sacrifice? When you look back, do you think, well, it really wasn't worth it?
Oh, yes.
We felt in the team, if we were trailing 2-0, we always had a feeling that we'd win 3-2.
Those last-minute goals, the comebacks, even the defeats are all part of this great football club of ours.
I feel like a great family.
Well, Matt Busby's without doubt the greatest manager ever lived.
I remember walking the corridors up to the manager's office at Old Trafford. The smell of Sir Matt Busby's pipe. I can smell it now.
The door would always be open, and I look back now and think, oh, we should have gone in more and talked to him more, but you were scared. This was like a god.
My mind goes back over the years to the day of my birth in a small village in Scotland. I was born in a pitman's cottage. It was a small mining village, nothing else but mines. The people themselves were brought up in a faith which was football. Nothing else ever seemed to take place. Nobody else seemed to talk about anything else other than football.
Was your father a miner?
He was, yes.
Was he also a footballer?
Yes, he played in a local junior team, and I understand had a lot of ability, but the war came on, of course. My father was killed in the First World War. I scarcely remember him. I was the oldest of four. There were 3 girls below me, and my mother, at a very young age, she was. She had a tremendous influence in my life, and of course the rest of the families. She was a real old Scotch type of mother who put her foot down at the right time, and she brought us up with an idea of having some common sense and trying to be a citizen, and if you were the job to do a job well.
If you're speaking about Matt Busby and what he was like, Busby, like any man of his age, was a product of his time.
There was quite a lot of depression in Lanarkshire with the coal mines and that type of thing. I'd been taken away from school. Before I knew what it was, I had gone working in the mines to try and earn a few shillings or a few pounds to help at home.
The poverty that was in Britain was shocking. And you're brought up in a mining village they were never thought of by governments as anything. And they had tough upbringings to etch out a living in. I mean, you think, back then the working class were getting paid a pittance. Miners were treated like shit, for use of a better word. They're treated like slaves.
For working class people everywhere, one of the great ways of escaping the poverty, deprivation, marginalisation of a working class existence was football.
I started playing a little football again. While my mother wasn't very keen, I went on a trial with Manchester City. But anyway, when I came back, in the meantime, they'd influenced me to sign for them.
Oldest manufacturing centre in the world, the cradle, modern industry. The old city's never stopped growing. And the more she's grown, the more it seems she'd got to grow.
Manchester City, a club with over half a century of history. 40 years ago, it became known by its present name. Today, Wilfred Wilde, the secretary-manager, receives thousands of pounds in entrance fees.
Coming down about 17 and a half, just under 18-year-old, and the first time coming from home, I knew I was trying to better myself, but the place was strange, and for a time I wasn't too happy about it. I had a form of a complex at the time. I think it was in form of an inferiority complex. I thought the first-team players were gods. And during this spell, I didn't do too well. I was probably the best part of a year and a half, kicking around, and at one time I thought about going home. I was so disappointed, disillusioned in every way. I was in lodgings with an older player who was in the first team, a chap called Phil McCloy, who, when he came in and saw me with this case, he says, "What's this you're doing?" I said, "Well, I feel as though I'm getting nowhere here." He says, "What's the case back for?" I said, "I'm going to go home." "You're going to go home? What are you going home to?" And of course he talked me into staying.
Busby's sense of judgment when he's taking a pass is one of his great assets, and he can trap a ball with unfailing precision.
Are you pleased he did?
I'm delighted he did.
For the second time in the lives of most of us, we are at war.
The flames of war eat at the heart of Manchester. In one of the fiercest raids of the German blitzkrieg on Britain, a storm of bombs wreaks havoc. Manchester will remember the horrors of that attack as long as the heart of the North continues to beat.
Many a time I used to think how miserable life was. The one thing they did try and knock into was the value of leadership.
Busby, he had this aura about him. He was quiet. I never heard him raise his voice. I never heard him swear. He made you want to do things for him.
So I had a great respect for human beings in general. That's why you ask anybody that met Matt, Matt treated people terrifically.
He knew everybody, and he made everybody feel important.
When the war came to an end, I, like many others, had to face some facts, some hard facts. I was about 36 years of age. My days as a player were numbered. I couldn't live in memories. Yet I couldn't think of leaving this wonderful game of football. So I decided to try my hand as a manager.
He arrived in Manchester to speak to the chairman in uniform because he had still to be demobbed from the army, even though he had no management experience at all.
So he had a very firm idea of what he wanted.
I mean, mining communities are very close-knit.
The sense of cooperation, working together, that is a form of socialism in action. That flows from his working class background.
He had a vision of a club, a family, he thought of it as, where nobody was bigger than the club, which was one of his mantras always. They will absorb the culture and the club, which is, we're all family, we're in this together. They will behave in a certain way, and they will play in a certain way.
What kind of qualities is it that you look for in a footballer that will go into your side?
First of all, I look for ability. That is essential, natural ability. I see natural ability. I like to see people that can play. They've got control, they've got a mind. I love to see a player with vision. Somebody can look at a place and look at a field and determine what he's going to do. I love to see a player playing with heart. And I also naturally want them to be of character.
He just felt that His duty was to entertain.
This was just after the war, when people had been 5, 6 years in the war and they wanted something to enjoy.
Men are working in these factories and they're working long hours and doing dirty jobs, and they're going home on the bus or on the bikes. And they come in on a Saturday afternoon to be entertained.
He was a big, handsome, imposing man. He never looked in any way stressed or perturbed. And he beguiled people. He beguiled Harold Hardman and the directors of Manchester United.
He was offered a contract as manager of Manchester United. This was people being impressed, seeing Matt as a leader, someone in whom they could place trust.
Somebody who could command the respect of people who wouldn't normally give respect to a footballer or indeed to a working class person.
It was not an easy assignment. The ground had been blitzed. There'd an overdraft at the bank. I had no experience as a manager, and I felt they were taking a great risk in appointing me.
Guiding United is ex-star Matt Busby, keeping a player's eye on the first-team workout.
All I had was certain ideas as to what a manager should do, faith in those ideas, and faith in the future of the club. I wanted them to mature and develop with the club. I believed in getting to know my players and not being chair-bound in an office.
Matt was the first of, the phrase was tracksuit managers. Before, managers had been, you know, three-piece suits with a watch perhaps dangling from the pocket. Matt literally put on a tracksuit and boots, training with the players, or it's difficult to convey how revolutionary this was.
The new soccer season gets a great send-off, and these supporters at Manchester were typical of crowds who packed grounds in all parts of the country to cheer their...
Manchester United was obviously full still of players who had experienced the war, who'd come back to play for Manchester United, like Johnny Carey, Charlie Mitten, Johnny Aston.
When he was 18, my dad ended up in the Royal Marines, so he never saw football again for another 5 years. He finished up in Australia in the war with the Marines, and he said he had a lovely suntan, and he said he went into Busby's office and said, look, my name's John Aston, any chance of a game with the juniors? And Busby looked at him and said, tell you what, son, you look fit, I'll put you in the reserves on Saturday.
What Matt showed in the early days was the ability to knit a team, and it was an absolutely brilliant team.
He just had the gift of empathy. He could zero in on you, and he knew what buttons to press. You had to be drawn to him. He wasn't coming at you. He was like a big cat, and you never quite knew which way he was going to jump.
They were very confident. They'd started to play in a manner that Busby was trying to get going, like a freedom of expression type of games. Manchester United took people by surprise, I think, almost snuck up on them. They thought, you know, these Reds, they can win something.
Lancashire finalists take the field at Wembley. Manchester United in dark shirts, Blackpool in white. It's the North's big day. A close duel between Manchester's Johnny Carey and Blackpool's Walter Rickett, number 11, is highlight number 1 in a thrill-packed match. Manchester's Jack Rowley, walking the ball into the net to equalise, provides highlight number 3. But now Manchester's attack, which has scored 95 goals this season, swings into its best style. From Johnny Morris's well-placed free kick, the fans cheer Jack Rowley's headed equaliser. Charlie Mitten, number 11, starts off United's winning attack. And from Rowley's pass, Stan Pearson scores the goal that gives Manchester the cup.
Straight
great day for Manchester. United's captain, Johnny Carey, receives the cup from the hands of His Majesty the King. Careful, Johnny, don't drop it. Now it is yours. And this is where United call once again on teamwork. Carey has the cup, Bitten the lid, and Pearson the plinth. United they call them, and united they are.
I'm very pleased to have been taking this trip back to Manchester again after a period of 40 years.
Every man, woman and child of the Cotton capital seems to be in Albert Square to cheer the 11 heroes of the hour, cup-winning Manchester United.
Well, Matt was very, very tough. One of the great characters of that team was Johnny Morris. Wonderful talent. After training, Matt asked him to do something and he walked off. That same night, he got a telephone call from the Press Association asking for reaction to his being placed on the transfer list. Matt had gone straight off the training field, rung the Press Association and said, "I got a little story for you." This was not getting rid of a player who was on the fringes of the team. This was probably the best player of his kind in England.
I can tell you easier what Matt Busby wasn't. He wasn't Father Christmas. He wasn't some benevolent figure. He was somebody with definite ideas and definite standards.
There was a game at Old Trafford where Harold Hardman, the director of United for more than 50 years, sat there behind Busby in the director's box, grumbling, I think, about Johnny Carey, and everybody could hear. And Busby went into the gents at half-time and said to Hardman, you know, "Don't you ever criticise one of my players or me in public ever again," and lay down the law.
Before Matt Busby, there were no football managers. Whoever was in charge of the football had power only to pick the team to play the next game.
He was very much the boss.
48 cup win had sort of whetted people's appetites and they thought that some new era had dawned. Well, it hadn't quite dawned. United came runners-up in 4 of his first 5 years in the league. And by 1952, the players were getting old. The feeling was this was their last chance.
Success in the league came in 1952, and satisfaction that Matt felt in 52 was massive.
And that really established not just United, but Busby as a major figure in the game.
We are going to build new schools with grounds for the kiddies to play, playing fields for football and cricket, gardens for the old folk. Here and there in the district you'll find local shopping centres and clinics and nurseries, community centres and schools close to the houses. But remember this, whether we go ahead on plans like this for the whole city, or whether we muddle along as we have done, most of Manchester anyhow will have to be rebuilt in the next 50 years, because Manchester's falling down, decomposing in front of our very eyes.
Food rationing didn't end until 1954. So it wasn't happy-go-lucky. It was a very grey area. Women didn't wear bright red or green dresses. Everything seemed quite grey. And the football colours, when you saw a football team, you can imagine seeing like United in their red. That was colour.
As King Football kicks off to another great year, millions thrill to the nation's favourite Saturday afternoon sport. Into the limelight again come the stars of the game.
Now, a lot of people talk about United being super rich, but they weren't. United were very, very poor. And they knew that they had a very, very ageing group of players, so they both determined to start inventing their own.
Busby himself was a great believer in youth. He knew that if you brought people in when they were teenagers, you became their father, and you could mould them to your way of thinking, to your way of playing. And of course, you didn't need to pay them so much. You could pay them less than the maximum wage. If you did it right, the style of play that would come through the B team and the A team and the reserve team, it would all dovetail together.
I believed in youth. I wanted them to mature and develop with the club. A year after I came here, I brought Jimmy Murphy. I'm quite sure this is one of the best signings I made.
Busby was like the pipe-smoking thinker in team meetings. If you asked him anything, he would give it a little bit of thought before he answered. Whereas Jimmy, he was a bit more like a Chicago gangster. He used to smoke and smoke and smoke. And he'd say, "Don't be so bloody stupid," or "Yeah, that's a good idea." That, you know, you get the instant riposte. Like all good double acts, they were a good foil for each other.
Very solid. He had ideas, and I wanted someone to look after youngsters at the time. Really, my right arm.
What they were trying to build, Busby and Murphy, was not just the best team, but the club itself, the best club in the world.
I think this started when I was at Manchester City as a boy, 17-year-old. I felt there was myself and probably 2 or 3 more were more involved with the club. We felt for the club. And I always had this in the back of my mind, to tell them they're coming to a club who will look after them. And from there, obviously, you try to build up love for a club. They're going to play football, they've got a good opportunity of playing it here. And the whole thing is trying to make the boys happy and enjoy themselves before they actually get signed on.
He knew that what happens in the dressing room will reflect itself on the pitch. He saw, as a player, how older professionals who'd had bad experiences became bitter. They didn't train properly. They were corrupted. So there would be, in his club, nobody who was damaged, nobody who was cynical, no rebels, nobody whispering behind the management's back.
The first question, Matt, is how do you find these boys?
Well, I'd say, Bill, I have a scouting system whose sole object is to go out looking for young, promising schoolboys, youth club boys, and indeed any young players who have the necessary natural ability to make a future Manchester United player.
He would do anything to get a young player he wanted. If it was Duncan Edwards, they'd pay the parents, which was illegal at the time. If it was someone in Ireland, he'd come himself to Dublin.
Ex-England captain Joe Mercer. He believes in catching them young so that ball control becomes instinctive.
One day I was talking with Joe Mercer. He had taken the English schoolboys on, doing a bit of coaching with them. I said, "Joe, we're after a boy, I can't remember the name of the boy," and Joe suddenly says to me, "The most outstanding player of them all is Duncan Edwards." And he says, "What's more," he says, "he's Manchester United mad."
Every club in England wanted to sign Duncan Edwards. Busby got him.
Duncan Edwards in Dudley was brought out of bed during the night to sign a contract because Mr. Busby was frightened of losing him to Wolves.
I'm an Edwards fanatic. He was the most complete footballer I've ever seen. He had strength, power in both feet. He had 40 and 50 yards, balls with consummate ease.
Edwards was incomparable. We used to try and find faults with all our kids, you know. I could never find a weakness there.
Common, he only weighed about 9 stone, wet through, little Eddie. Tremendous player.
He was a cheeky chappy. You know, he always had an answer to everything, and he was a great puller of women. I was captain of England schoolboys, so a lot of clubs were chasing me when I was 15. So I decided on United because of their great youth policy.
I was first starting to play football, and of course every young player wants to be improved and wants to be better. People used to tell me that Newcastle didn't have a good coaching system. It really was a hard place to live in those days. If you didn't work in the mines or the shipyards, you know, there wasn't really that much that you could work at. So if there was any opportunity, you know, you went and you travelled.
Busby was very, very clever. You could only sign 2 schoolboys. He signed the players, best in England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales. Well, his trick was, sign the young players and put them on the ground staff. You could have 11 on the ground staff.
I did actually go at 15 and a half to work for Manchester United in the office.
They came, we nurtured them, we watched them, we looked after them, they were coached.
Great care was taken at the digs they were put in. The landladies were watching what went on. People would tell him, fans would say, "Oh, I saw such somebody out late last night," or whatever.
And if he needed to tell you off, He'd say, I want you in my office tomorrow morning at such a time. So you'd think, oh, blimey. And you'd spend all day and night worried about it. Good manners, don't insult people, you're doing this, you're doing that. And he did guide us. He was just like a father to us.
We were sort of all together type of thing. You become a sort of family. It was a family.
The youth team, Jimmy Murphy always used to say, was the cream. Forget about the first team in the FA Cups and all that. This was the most important thing. I can remember I wouldn't go to bed the night before a youth match because I'd been brainwashed, indoctrinated into thinking that this was the most important match that you ever played in your whole life. We won the Youth Cup every year I played. First 5 years of its existence was won by Manchester United.
If you care to come and look at the boys, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You see Johnny Berry take a short corner, which we use very often in the game. He passes it on to Bill Whelan, who in turn turns it back.
Well, obviously they can't all play in the first team, but how do you keep them happy in the second team?
Well, of course, Bill, we have no first-team players at Old Trafford. They are all possible first-team players.
We'd had success at that time. I felt as though I had to do something to get young players going.
Runners-up 4 times, then league champions in '52. And then Matt Busby brought on the Babes, replacing 8 of that championship side in one fell swoop.
And when I was just turned 16, I was playing for Manchester United first team, which was quite extraordinary.
Well, I got my debut as a 17-year-old, you know, which was, to me, very special. And then I found out every other player had got, at 17, had got promoted to the first team.
Wilf was a good player, but not in the same class as Bobby. But he made his debut about 9 months before, because my father kept Bobby back, because he didn't think Bobby was tough enough. My father would have him running round like an idiot to get out of breath.
All the players used to say, until you actually play in the first division, you don't realise how much you push yourself through pain barriers, which you never do in reserve team games.
Bobby would say, I'm knackered, I'm tired. And my father would say, well, you're not going to die. Get running again.
My right ankle was swollen up. It was quite painful. And I hadn't played in the reserves for a few weeks. And he called me up to his room and said, I'm playing you in the first team tomorrow. If there's one time I didn't really want to play, it was that day. But he said, are you all right? Is your foot all right? And I said, yeah, it's all right. And suddenly, the attention of the whole country was on Manchester United because they're playing babies, you know, they can't possibly win anything.
Now football is a pleasant game. It's played in the sun, played in the rain, and the team that gets me excited, Manchester United. Manchester United. A bunch of bouncing Busby Babes. They deserve to be knighted. If ever they're playing in your town, you must get to that football ground. Take a lesson, come to see. Football taught by Matt Busby and Manchester. Manchester United. A bunch of bouncing Busby Babes. They deserve to be knighted.
Luck has a lot to do with it. Like all good teams, there was just the right blend. And every great side have always had this.
Roger was the captain, so he was a bit above us.
Peg out the number 10.
David Pegg, a Yorkshire lad, did his business. He was a good dribbler. He surprised us, actually, because we thought Yorkshire, you know, were they? But he was special. I think he dated my wife before she was my wife.
Mr. Busby, he wasn't frightened of spending money, but he only spent it when he had to. Paid £30,000 for Tommy Taylor from Barnsley.
It was a record fee, so he had to live with that around his shoulders. If he had a bad one, we'd say, you paid for him, you know. A great, great centre forward. We all felt that we were lucky to be a Manchester United player. And let's not kick it into touch. Let's go about it and do it for him.
Cross to Berry, it comes. The right wing. Black will defend.
trying the offside game. Berry going through with it by himself. Across it comes and Tom made it perfectly.
We all went out together. We went to dance halls. We went on holidays together. We were very, very fortunate to all join together.
And Matt was growing up. He'd had a tough life. And I think he saw an enthusiasm, a vigour for life, for joy, for fun.
The mid-50s were the early flowering of culture and excitement and leisure. And Harold Macmillan was saying, you've never had it so good. And the Busby Babes were part of that flourishing of society and the excitement and the youthfulness of a generation.
The Busby Babes, the way they played was rock and roll. They weren't shackled by old ideas. They were inspiring.
It was a wonderful place to be at, Manchester United in those days. Terrific.
A very distinct memory as a kid here. They used to come to train on the bus. Players, just the odd one would have a car. They'd go on the pub on a Saturday night, you know, for a drink.
They were ordinary folk. So the fans related to them. They saw them in the shop buying their cigarettes in the streets, the newspapers.
They represented what was then a working class game, and they represented those Mancunians.
He'd say those people have paid money to come and watch, you know. It'd give us a right volley.
They were so far ahead. They were so new. They were so fit. They were so original. There was an air about them of invincibility, and they played on that.
But nothing is more gratifying than to spot a star in a barrel and see him develop year by year to his predestined place among the gallery of the immortals.
Last Christmas was the gayest and most abundant we have ever known. More to spend and more to buy, and young and old alike rejoiced to see the ration book go.
When we won the championship in '56, I said to my board, I'd like us to go into Europe. The next thing is we apply. The League Management Committee sent a letter to the club saying they didn't like the idea of us going in.
Chelsea had won the league in 1955, and they were told that it would conflict with the fixtures, so they backed off. Well, Mr. Busby wasn't going to be doing any backing off, thank you.
I felt very strongly about it at the time. This is a new avenue to go into.
It was not a Scottish game, it was not an English game, it was not an Irish game, it was a world game.
They were warned by the Football League, if it interferes with your commitments, you will be punished severely. Included the possibility that United would be put out of the Football League.
So I never doubted it for a moment it was right, because the old man said, that's the way we've got to go. And if we have to argue with our own football authorities, so be it.
We had a meeting again. We just went on with it.
It was a terrific, terrific time. There was no television. We didn't see Spanish football or French football or German football or whatever. So we went and played all these wonderful teams.
It was all completely different. The roar was different. When somebody's had a shot, it's a whoosh.
Then a real blizzard hit United.
Manchester was set for the semi-finals.
When you go abroad and play in these competitions, there's a great responsibility. You represent yourself, your club, your country, and it's a very trying thing.
Manchester United go to Madrid for the European Cup. English champions already, they now want to be European champions too.
He wanted Manchester United to become England's Real Madrid, and that was his dream.
Matt seen Real Madrid, how they could attract crowds of over 100,000 paying much more than the English customer would pay.
The stadium was the first thing I noticed going over there. Tremendous stadium.
I was one of the reserves. I was terribly pleased that I wasn't playing. You know, I saw Stefano and that, and I thought, you know, well, these things aren't human. You know, it's not the type of game that I'd ever been taught before. They beat us 3-1. It could have been 2 possibly, you know. But then we came back. There was so much atmosphere and so much tension in the city, and I suppose in the country, that by the time we came out to play them, we started to fancy our chances a little bit, if we could get an early goal.
After 25 minutes, Copa takes a pass in the penalty area and shoots a low one. So began 9 minutes of dramatic, decisive soccer. Here's Madrid's second. Hento passes, Real shoots. Too easy. On come the floodlights for the second half. Manchester, 4 goals down in the aggregate, need a miracle to save them. Is this it? Peg centres. Taylor does the rest. Another Peg pass, and Charlton scores a beauty. They've equalised.
They only had about 10 minutes left. And I can remember somebody fell over and was wasting time, and Duncan Edwards picked him up. He picked him up and didn't throw him, but placed him off the pitch.
It's a pity that such behaviour on both sides should spoil the brilliant football which gave Real Madrid their semi-final victory.
Well, there's some memories, there's some pleasant memories actually. We've done a wonderful thing this year. They were young, just maturing. The year we were beaten by Real Madrid the early year was due to inexperience, really.
You were going places where people couldn't go in those days, behind the Iron Curtain.
People brought little stoves with them, chocolates, anything to eat, you know, something that they could knock together quickly.
Each player would have maybe a dozen hard-boiled eggs. Crazy when you think about it.
And really, the food wasn't too bad at all, really. It was okay.
Manchester United have flown to the Yugoslav capital to play their return match with Red Star Belgrade, the champions of Yugoslavia. United only have to draw to make sure of a place in the European Cup semi-final, the round in which they were beaten last year.
We'd travel away. Before a match, and Big Duncan used to say, "Go on, boys, we ain't come here for nothing." N-U-F-F-I-N. This was always his famous saying before going out.
And he's sticking his chest out like, this is what I want to do.
Manchester United, the greatest team in post-war football, won their way through to the semi-final of the European Cup.
I thought myself, Matt, you can sit back, because everything that's possible to be won was there.
After the match, you know, you were allowed to have a drink. We used to have a few drinks. We used to have more than enough, I must be honest.
Enjoyed the party, enjoyed the banquet. The lads were lads. They had a drink. Been up all night whether you drunk or not. We got to the airport the following morning with the sore heads and tired heads. And I only woke up when I heard everybody safe, fasten their safety belts. And we come down, we were nearly on the runway before we knew it, because it was what they call a very low cloud base.
They were under strict instructions from the Football League that they would be fined if they didn't arrive back in time to play their scheduled league game and they were grounded in Munich airport.
I went up the runway once and they come back. And we're still in the plane. Second time, we went along the runway. When we went back to the starting gate again, we were told to go into the cafeteria. And then about 20 minutes, half an hour after that, there was an announcement to proceed through the plane as the fault had been corrected. This eased everybody's mind.
Yeah.
And then there was just tearing and darkness and daylight. And
I woke up and I was in my seat, still strapped in. But I was about 20 or 30 yards from the plane.
Well, I was lucky I got out because my safety belt was broke. Just as I got to the outside of the plane, the first person I saw was, I believe, Folks, Mr. Folks here.
When I got out of the plane, the hoses, the firemen had arrived, so I must have had a blackout. And the first person I saw when I got out was, who looked alive, was Mr. Busby. The others, everybody else, were unconscious. So I stayed with Mr. Busby and tried to keep him warm, you know. I was rubbing his hands and kept trying to keep him comfortable, and he seemed to be in really bad shape, you know.
Here is the news. So far, we know there are 23 survivors after Manchester United's air crash at Munich this afternoon. Of the crew of 6 and 38 passengers on board, including a baby, these are the people so far known to have survived. Of the Manchester United party, Matt Busby, manager, and the following players: Gregg, Wood, Folks, J. Blanchflower, Morgans, Berry, Charlton, Violet, and Scanlon.
I'd be about 13, and I remember coming home from school and watching children's television, and it broke in to the children's programme to say that there was a report that Manchester United plane had crashed at Munich, and Manchester was just in shock.
And the first thing my mother says, "Oh God, your father." She thought he was on the plane, because he should have been. And I said, "No, he hasn't gone, he's in Wales."
When I got back from the Welsh match, I didn't know a dicky bird about this thing at all. Our secretary told me, and I couldn't believe it. I cried like a child.
My dad went down to Old Trafford to see if he could help out, but we had no details, and then as the details seeped out, the magnitude of the horror became apparent, yeah.
What's your reaction to the news about Manchester United?
It's a terrible shock. I mean, to everybody concerned. I mean, players, wives, officials, and everybody. I mean, it's just nothing you can say about it, is there, really?
Well, I think it's the biggest tragedy Manchester's ever had.
Dad went with Mrs. Busby, Sandy Busby, and a few of the wives. They all flew out together. The Busby family were obviously petrified because Matt was on death's door, really. He had the blessings of the dead.
I was walking home in front, about 10 yards in front of my mum, and I saw this old man in an oxygen tent, and he looked grey. And I thought, oh, yeah, for so-and-so, you know. And then it struck me. It's my dad.
And I had tremendous chest injuries. My chest was all fractured, and the lung was pierced, and legs were broken. And first moment of something of consciousness, if you like, was one of the staff had said this one was dead. And momentarily I could understand that. But there were all sorts of bodies around. On my wife, who was there, I said to her, you have to tell me what has happened. This is making me worse. So when I went through the names, she either nodded her head or just her head like that. Tommy Taylor, David Pegg, Freddie Coleman, Matt Jones, Billy Whelan, Jeb Bent. Oh. Tragic loss for them.
Duncan was propped up in bed by pillows. When Jimmy went up to the bed, he turned and he said, "What time did I kick off, Jimmy?"
My father phoned Billy Whelan's family from Munich to say that sadly your son's dead, but he will never be forgotten.
Life was very, very difficult for quite some time. I had some strange things happen. When I was getting a little better, they put me on one of the tables to try and get me some fresh air. I remember as they pushed me through the door, I screamed and screamed mad, and they pulled me back in again. I had the feeling that I might have been responsible. Why did I take the club into Europe? Why did we go the third time? And I felt that I wanted to die.
I'd like to say a few words to my mother. I hope she's okay.
Yes.
And taking it well.
Look at her while you're doing it.
She hasn't been down to see me, you know, but it's a bit long way and I'm all right. If I'd have been a bit worse off, like some of the others.
When he signed a player, he made sure that the parents knew that he was going to look after them. And suddenly, this had happened.
I missed this trip because of injury. It was very upsetting. It hurts to think about it. I have a corner of my mind that they'll always be there.
The night the coffins came home, there were thousands of people just standing in the street watching the hearses go past. And most of them crying. People just sobbing their hearts out. The old men, women.
My mum and my aunt used to wash the shirts. 10 days later, they're polishing coffins. But nobody said, "Can you cope, ladies? Do you want any help?" Or "Do you need to talk to somebody?" Because there's nobody to talk to.
Directors wanted to drop out of the league for the rest of the season because, you know, we can't cope with that. Dad said, "I can do this job." "No, we'll drop out." "No, I'll do it."
He said, "Jimmy, keep the flag flying." I had this great empire of ours to run. Of course, I had only 2 or 3 first-team players left.
When the team sheets came out, United's team sheet was completely and utterly blank.
We know, Jimmy, that things have been a bit hectic for you these last few days. How do you think they're sorting themselves out now? Well, these things take time, Frank. As you know, we're in a terrible mess, really, for players and so forth.
Right, and obviously Harry Gregg and Bill Foulkes have recovered from the experience of the Munich crash. Tell me, did you have any doubts about their selection?
Oh, no, not to the slightest.
You didn't?
They're both full of beans on top of the world.
My father persuaded Billy and Harry to play, because they weren't so keen because they'd lost their mates, which you can understand. He said to Billy Foulkes, I need a captain and you're him. And Billy Foulkes said, I don't want to do it and I can't do it. And Dad said, you can do it and you will do it. And that was it. And they got off the train. And they're walking along. Have you got a quote for us, Jimmy? And he said, yes, if you don't get out of my way, I'll piss on your shoes.
I had a job, you know, to keep the tears back as we're playing.
Billy Foulkes, number 2, now their captain, won the toss, and no sooner...
The best thing that happened to me was get down to Old Trafford to kick and fight and argue and do the things, or I definitely lost it up there.
Harry Gregg goes into action.
One morning, and it was after we played Sheffield Wednesday. I couldn't find the paper, and I found out why I couldn't find the paper. It was because Duncan had died.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am speaking from my bed in the Iser Hospital, Munich, where I have been since the tragic accident of just over a month ago. You will be glad, I am sure, to know that the remaining players here and myself are now considered out of danger. And I am delighted to hear of the success and united effort made by all at Old Trafford. For it is only this last 2 or 3 days that I have been able to be told anything about football. And I enclose my best wishes to everyone. And finally, may I just say, God bless you all.
Matt Busby's reborn babes show that disaster cannot quench their fighting spirit.
It was a very traumatic time for the club. I was in a position of responsibility that I had to take. My life was never the same.
So when they came back, they wanted them to get playing as quickly as possible and catch up with their matches.
Played West Brom in the 6th round of the FA Cup. And we beat them after a replay at Old Trafford within the last minutes of extra time.
Busby's miraculous babes, 6 weeks from a disaster which stunned the footballing world, are determined to reach Wembley or bust. Bobby Charlton, and out to the right wing. Back again to Charlton, who runs in for a shot that leaves Macedo helpless. So the astonishing babes have done it again. And it's to be an all-Lancashire Cup final.
And I could feel him getting better and better as time went on. That the crunch was coming back to England. I'd overcome the biggest obstacle. Well, it was a slow process. It was the start.
Wembley's Empire Stadium is certainly a very powerful magnet on the great day. 100,000 or so were there, and they fairly cheered Matt Busby, who had recovered sufficiently to be present, as his Manchester United men came out beside their white-shirted opponents, Bolton Wanderers. Then Bobby Charlton sets the ball rolling, and the match of the season is underway.
Yeah, I was mentally, I was terrified to come and look at the ground and feel the people. And I'd force myself to do it, force myself, I had to do it.
Less than 3 minutes have passed when Brian Edwards puts in a perfect cross, and Nat Lofthouse does the rest. It's a goal! Fizzer from Charlton comes back off the post into Hopkinson's arms. About 2 minutes later, the hard shot from Stevens is held by Gregg, and Lofthouse puts him and the ball into the net. Bolton Wanderers had certainly earned congratulations for their 4th Wembley win, while Manchester United deserve the highest praise for reaching Wembley against all odds.
When he came back, he was on crutches, and we'd go and meet him at the door, and he'd go upstairs through the director's door, up the stair, and he would give you his crutches while he forced himself to walk down the passage using the wall.
I'll never forget the first time we all met him again. We were all assembled in the dressing room, and he looked at us all. Tears came in his eyes, and he just walked out. We understood we knew what he was going through. He just was looking at faces that weren't there.
I was told, don't upset yourself, get out and play for them, and that sort of thing. They wanted that. They wanted us to remember them on the field.
My first reaction was never to have anything to do with football again. My wife said, well, the lads that have died would want you to carry on. And it struck a note. And from there, I started thinking that way.
And there the cheers of the crowd as Matt Busby returns once again to Old Trafford and takes his usual seat, the manager's seat. And everyone knows how much he's been looking forward to getting back to Old Trafford to see his team in action.
And it was a good job I went back and forced myself to go back, because I become occupied, and I got this obsession again that Manchester United were going to the top.
Crowd of well over 30,000, Matt Busby looking on as critically as ever to see how his team is performing.
And next, the cameras go out to the Cliff training ground. And here we meet the new Manchester United, the youngest of the Busby Babes, the reserve men whom fate has suddenly made first-team men.
We got so many problems, and trying to create a new Manchester United. It was a very harassing time.
Number 10.
We couldn't wait for young people to build a young team again. It meant actually that I could try into the transfer market and try and buy one or two players that I felt would help us through this particular period.
My father joined United just after the war. Matt was a tracksuit manager. When I played, you never saw Matt.
I joined in 1960, and there were 5 years post-Munich when the training ground was a kind of sterile place. Busby was notable by his absence.
No, well, I say with the situation, Dennis is the stumbling block at the present time. If he's there...
I remember Noel saying to me, "Is this it?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Is this the great Manchester United?" But I was 12th man for the first team. On the coach, a piece of paper was passed down. It was a cartoon of Busby with the words "bollock chops." It was a shock to me, but it was the way the senior players were thinking. Someone like Bobby Charlton would resent some of the people who came in. But the Manchester United dream was dying, if not dead.
There was a tremendous turnover of players coming in, going out, shuffling right, left and centre.
Well, I wanted Dennis Slaw as a boy. He was at Huddersfield at the time, and I went to Andy Beattie, who was the manager then, and said, "Look, I'll give you £10,000 for you, this young blonde elf." "No, man," he said, "we think we've got something." And Andy Beattie was right, because they had something.
And bumped into Mr. Busby in those days, and he said to me, he said, "How's things going in Torino or whatever, you know?" I said, "Well, really not good, really. The football's rubbish, really."
Yeah, I eventually bought him from Torino. You're offered £115,000 for him. That was cheap at the price. One of these magnificent goals, magnificent player. It was cheap at the price. He used to rise so majestically, and he had to stay there and head these balls so well. And he was so courageous, you know, no matter who they were, or what they were, how big they were. Sometimes the big ones would maybe clatter him. "I can't promise you I'm not to come back." I said, all right, but keep out the trouble, that's all.
That fair-haired genius, Dennis Law.
The first time I ever met Matt Busby was at 61 or 62. We thought, God almighty, that's Matt Busby.
His instinctive eye for talent brought Pat Creran to Old Trafford.
I came just beginning of February '63, and the team weren't doing particularly well.
We'd signed Pat Creran, we'd signed Law that year. Played at Leicester one time, and Law scored a hat-trick. We lost 4-3. However we played, we just couldn't win.
There was a 9-week period where we had snow and frost and there were no games played. And trying to catch up on all the fixtures, we just couldn't get it going. We were drifting down and not seeming to get the results.
And I remember coming in after the match and saying, "What have we got to do to win a match?"
See the Saints get the game going. Top star of Southampton, Terry Payne, soon shows sparkling form on the right. Early on, he's on the warpath.
That year,
David Gascoigne.
we had almost been relegated. We finished about 6th or 7th from the bottom. In the cup, it was like a release the cup.
A well-placed centre. Dennis Law just manages to connect. Goal! It's all over. Manchester United 1, Southampton 0. It's United versus Leicester City in the final.
Inside the stadium, 100,000 fans ready to raise that new roof. With the arrival of Her Majesty, the preliminaries reached their climax. The gladiators entering the arena.
He did say, Matt Busby, that it would take 5 years for the club to be really established as a real football power again.
We were outsiders, and it suited us with the quality of players we had. The day of a big game, they would come through.
He shoots, it goes to Hurd, and it's in the net. The fulfillment of an English footballer's ambition, the cup and the cup medal. It's a moment of triumph for their manager, Matt Busby. Proof that he has most successfully rebuilt United.
The milk companies that sponsored the cup final, and there were bloody bottles of milk they had in the dressing room, not champagne. Milk we were drinking.
Mr. Busby, third time lucky. What do you feel about it?
Well, I think it's a wonderful thing for myself, the club, the players, and everything else, because these boys have got it in them. And, of course, they've shown it today. And I'm very, very pleased indeed.
All right? Hold it up. Up high. Smile. Come on, smile.
How one game can change a football team. The cup was a big, big affair. It's a massive affair worldwide in '63. It changed Manchester United. So that gave you the lift to think they could do anything.
Very pleased to meet you and welcome to Old Trafford. I'm Matt Busby, the manager of Manchester United. All you boys follow me, I'll take you down to the dressing room. Right?
Manchester United last year confirmed the old saying, lousy in the league, lucky in the cup. But Dennis Law, for one, has other ideas for this year.
It was the start of the season. These two boys had come over in Belfast. And watching them playing and carrying on, I come back with the opinion that there was someone there who had extraordinary talent. But he's still a boy of 15 years of age.
Played for Craigie Boys Club, and Manchester United invited me for trials. And at first when I went over, I only stayed a couple of days, and I was homesick and came back home. But my father, he had a talk with Matt Busby, and he decided to give me another chance.
To McCready.
Man, his approach to the ball, it was uncanny. He had this, obviously, this tremendous balance for a boy. I brought him up the side, 17-year-old.
George was like Edwards. Best didn't need coaching at all.
Amazing. I found it quite easy to play in the First Division. You know, I don't have to train hard. You know, I don't have to work on anything. It must be just natural ability.
Wriggling out space. What a fine save! What a fine shot! George...
Sir Matt had always advocated that you went forward, you were good players, make sure that you perform to your best and you don't be afraid to express yourself.
Manchester United have now won 6 league games on the trot. They're in the form to go through, get into Europe for the first time since the 1957-58 season.
And because of that, George felt that he could beat 6 or 7 people if he wanted. Dennis could try acrobatic overhead kicks and things like that. I could maybe try to shoot from distances that was really stupid, you know.
I was in the middle of the park with Bobby Charlton. Nobby was defending along with Billy Fulks and Shea Brethren and Tony Dunn that were 2 attacking full backs. We just clicked, and it was a great attacking team. It was all about going forward.
Here we are on the last Saturday of the Football League season, and still any one of 3 teams can win the First Division Championship.
So after European games in the early 60s, teams would often stay over, and we would go after the match to the Midland dressed up, a dinner, a cabaret, and at 2 o'clock in the morning we'd be doing a conga around the corridor. And who would lead the conga? Mr. and Mrs. Busby. Brilliant.
At Old Trafford, the home of league champions Manchester United. There, Matt Busby is really the boss. He's the only manager in the Football League to have held his job for 20 years, and he's made United England's most successful post-war club. As a manager, what is his approach?
Today I regard football as a big business. Many years ago, a few years ago, there was a certain amount of sport in it. One might say there's sport there just now, but not to the extent. It is business, and you've got to produce, and results count. Because after all, end of the season, football clubs must show profit of some kind.
In the early 60s, Sir Matt brought a successful businessman into the club. Louis Edwards worked in the meat industry in Manchester, a big United fan and a friend of Matt Busby's. Louis brought with him a business acumen that was not existent then.
The reminders of his first great team are all around him. The young Charlton is now a great player. Billy Fowkes is as firm and reliable as ever. Harry Gregg, older and wiser, still the first-choice goalkeeper. Pat Crerand and also Dennis Law epitomise a somewhat different policy now. These then were the foundations on which Busby built his second football team. He's put them in the setting of a new £300,000 stand and a ground that's had £1 million spent on it in the 20 years of his managership. He has rebuilt not only a club, but a reputation. The practical rewards from a satisfied board of directors have been a 1/9 share in Manchester United and a seat on the board when he feels that he's ready to take it.
United were the first club in the country to introduce private boxes at the stadium. And that was a business decision taken jointly by Sir Matt and Louis Edwards. They saw that there's a market for this. But the world was then that between them, they had mates who could buy all the boxes anyway.
For Busby and United, the wheel has turned full circle, and again they're in the European Cup. In their first leg quarter-final match against Benfica, their fluid, freewheeling game brought them a 3-2 victory. It was a triumph of Busby the tactician.
I think generally we are a better side. If our boys play as they can play, I feel we'll beat them.
You have to beat them, Matt. I'm wondering whether there's anything left, really, for you to prove.
I still want Manchester United to be the best team in Europe. And the only way they can be the best team in Europe is by winning the European Cup.
You know, the fans wanted to win, but it was for him, it was that popular with the players. Of course I didn't want to let him down. Just that bit of magic that got you doing what you wanted to win for him more than anything else.
Dennis Law and the rest of Matt Busby's men had only one thought: attack. After 7 minutes, the ball went to George Best. Goal!
Here comes Best again. What a player this boy is! He's got another! What a player!
With your hair held there like a mane, and your feet play tricks like a juggler, and you weave to the sound of your name. Georgie, Georgie, they call you the Belfast boy. Georgie, Georgie, they call you the Belfast boy.
He's already a hero throughout the world of football. Like Matthews and Pelly and Eusebio, his is a name that will put 10,000 on the gate wherever he plays.
I think the maturity of the next 2 or 3 years will make him probably the most complete player.
I realize, I know sometimes I go a bit beyond, what I shoot my limits. Because at the moment, training and football is not a strain to me. I enjoy training, but I think maybe 3-4 years, if you can't burn a candle at both ends, which I admit I have done.
Georgie, Georgie, they call you the Belfast boy. Georgie, Georgie, they call you the Belfast joy. They say, Georgie, Georgie, keep your feet on the ground. Georgie, Georgie, when you listen to the sound. Georgie, Georgie, go.
Do you think that present-day footballers are very much overpaid? It seems to be sort of out of all proportion.
Well, I really think every man should be paid according to his ability. I must say that I've never objected to paying very big wages to a lot of the Manchester United players because they had the ability to do something, the ability to win something, and the ability to pull crowds.
With the abolition of the maximum wage in the early 60s, players could have earned a lot more at other clubs.
The only player, Bobby Charlton told me once, he said, the boss called me, he said, "Do you want to rise, Bobby?" I'd never heard of that before. I know that Dennis Law went for a rise, he didn't get it. And why did he do it? Upbringing, man of his age. You're worth £25 a week. You don't get £25 a week till I think you're worth £25 a week. And he was tight.
United managed to hold down the wage bills at Old Trafford. Players like George Best and Bobby Charlton and Dennis Law were playing for the prestige and the glory and the reputation.
It's a goal! Oh, beautiful goal! Are United going to lose their semi-final of the Champions Cup?
You have lost to one or two rather moderate sides. I'm thinking of Partizan last year.
Last year, I thought we were sure to win it. Beaten Benfica and played so magnificently. I rather think it gave us a false impression. And the semi-final we played Partizan, I think we rather took the view that we just got to go on the field and play and pick up the semi-final and go into the final. I think it was this, I think, was the reason why we lost.
You are reputed, of course, to be looking for one or two players now to improve and sort of develop your squad a bit. Is that right?
Well, of course, we bought Alex Steppen, the goalkeeper. We seem to be losing a lot of goals, and I think he's tightened up the defence considerably.
I mean, I'm asking, really, will you ever really win the great...
Oh, a good bit of football by Aston to Creran. To Saturday, is this number 4? Yes!
This is another great day in the history of Manchester United.
And now the sprint within the run.
Winning the league was obviously fantastic. It put us in the European Cup. It was probably Matt's last chance ever to win the European Cup.
To Kidd, beautiful move this. 3 players in the middle. Burns, great save! And it's there! Aston the scorer. Johnny Aston, the son of the former Manchester United international, gets the vital goal. And Manchester United are through into the next round. Aston gained the cue at the far post for the cross if he can get it back. Ran well for him. Best!
We won 1-0 at Old Trafford in the first leg. We went to Madrid. We've gone out there thinking, well, if we can get to 0-0 at half-time, we've got a chance.
It's a goal! 1 minute's gone in this match. The crowd erupts. Oh, it goes absolutely clear. Brennan never made contact. And it's the second goal, and poor Shea Brennan. Oh, goal! It's an own goal! What an astonishing thing. There was no danger. Pinto trying to blast it through, and another goal! The half-time score, 3-1 then to Real Madrid, and 3-2 they lead on aggregate.
We went in that dressing room. What are you doing? You're supposed to be out there attacking teams. You've done it all. What? Laughing. He said, semi-final, go out and enjoy yourselves. You've let me down, you've let the supporters down, you've let the club down.
The match is so tense, has produced such an atmosphere that you could almost touch it. Best. Oh! And it's Sadler, and it's Counts. Everybody can't believe it. It looked for a moment as if he might have handled it, but the goal's given, and Manchester United are very much back in this European Cup. Best has made the space well. Chance! Fawkes! He scored! Bill Fawkes! The man who's played right through Manchester United's European Cup campaign. Fawkes, of all people, poaching on the edge of the box. And what a good goal it was, too. Set up by George Best. and Manchester United could be on the way to that final.
No other memory of him scoring the goal. And then he actually side-footed the ball into the goal. I can't remember him side-footing anything, you know.
Overtime, and there it is, and they've done it. Manchester United have gone into the final of the European Cup, and Bobby Charlton's fallen right over. He's lying flat. I'm not quite sure whether he's fainted or what, or whether he's crying, but Bobby Charlton is stretched out on the pitch. And what a moment this is for Matt Busby and Manchester United. And Bobby Charlton, who's played like Milkoff through all the Manchester United European Cup matches, overcome right at the last moment.
Bobby, you've won every honour in the game, but it's not come easily to you. Now, I remember a long time ago, sitting in the Wembley dressing room alongside you. It was 1958, it was just after Munich, and you were crying that day. Do you remember? You sat in the dressing room and you got a loser's medal again. Yeah. And I remember you saying to me, oh, well, you know, this is another loser's medal kind of thing. Yeah. And I suddenly had the feeling tonight it was going to happen to you again in this sense. Did you feel that?
No, I've got over that now. I expect to lose sometimes. But I shall be more disappointed if we lose the next one. Yes. You know, but we'll give them a run.
Well, you're fair of you. You've been right through United's campaign ever since, you know, United became the first.
But I felt I always had something driving me on. Pushed myself a lot further. Because I felt I had to win that European Cup.
We always said that we must win the European Cup because that's what the lads died trying to achieve. It was, the sweat was pumping out of us.
Alex Stepney, round kid, and a happy 19th birthday to him. The unmistakable figure of George Best. And John Aston, whose proud father is here to watch him today. Bill Foulkes, who's played in every European Cup campaign for Manchester United, the only player to have done so. One of the greatest servants Manchester United are ever likely to have. Pat Guerin, a lot of people say he's one-pace player, but he's an immaculate passer of the ball. 13th European Cup final, and there is Matt Busby, and how most people in this stadium, and I'm sure in the television audience, are praying for him at this moment. I've never known such tension in Wembley Stadium before. This is a tremendous, emotional occasion.
Being underway, and it's Manchester United kicking off in the dark shirts, the dark blue shirts, attacking the goal on your left. Aston again leading, Adolfo miles behind. Watch Kidd on the far post. Now Sadler. For Aston, what a good ball too. Fine try by Johnny Aston then.
Matt Busby must be wondering whether it wasn't important what went away.
For Sadler. Charlton. It's there. Bobby Charlton. Bobby Charlton makes it 1-0. That's his 20th goal in the European Cup competition. This is going to Torres' head again. Eusebio, and now Grassa. It's 1-1. Grassa, Jamie Grassa. Simo is breaking for Benfica, and Eusebio going through the middle. What a tremendous save! Oh,
Wonderful keeping by Stepney there. He came right out and narrowed that angle. The only way he could go in was over the top.
And the whistle goes for the end of 90 minutes. The second time in the history of the European Cup that there has been extra time. We now go into the first period of 15 minutes. Our best. Oh, he's got a big chance! Oh, he must! He has! Georgie Best has done it! Makes it 2-1. And that was a tremendous save, Kidd! Kidd it is, number 8! Charlton in the middle, so too is Aston. Charlton! Another! He's got another! Yes, it is! It's all over! Manchester United have done it! And where is the man everyone thinks of? Matt Busby, tremendous moment for this great man. The man that they would have for Prime Minister, President and everything.
When teams win something, you go to the nearest player. I don't think one of us, not one of us, went to our nearest player. We all went to Bill Fawkes, to Bobby Charlton and Matt Busby. It was never rehearsed.
Well, we've waited a long, long time for this. Manchester United are the European champions. Well done, Manchester United.
That night at Wembley was a crowning glory for us all. It was a night of achievement. It was the object of the exercise from the start. And with the tragedy, there was joy that night.
We've got here the boys who've done us proud last night. The boys who have won honour for the club. They won honour for Manchester. They won honour for England. I'm very proud to be the manager of these lads who have done such a wonderful job. Finally, up the Reds. Up the Reds.
So, as Sir Matt receives his accolade, doubters will still ask, since he's already known and revered by every football fan in the country, what does the tap on the shoulder and the use of a Sir before his name really add up to?
How did your mother react when this boy from the pitman's cottage became Sir Matt Busby?
I know made her a very proud woman. She sent a telegram, "Dear Sir Matt Boss," which is a very nice.
She must have been very, very thrilled.
Oh, yes.
Good morning, everyone.
Sir Matt has informed the board that he wishes to relinquish the position of team manager at the end of the present season. The chairman and directors have tried to persuade him to carry on, and it was only with great reluctance that his request has been accepted.
I'll take one.
This is a job you really wanted, isn't it?
Well, yes, it's something you dream about. Something I've dreamt about now and again.
I was so proud that he chose me, and I'll always be proud of that. You can't take that away, that I was the one he chose.
Sir Matt, you appear to have given Wilf McGuinness all the responsibilities of team manager without the actual title.
No.
Is there a reason for this?
I've listened to his observations at matches and half-time a match and so on, and I thought, well, that's exactly the way I felt about it.
We were all amazed that Wilf McGuinness got the job in actual fact. I think Wilf might have been surprised as well.
Will you stress to the players, the present players, that he has full authority?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. What would be your reaction should he drop George Best?
If he feels he drops George Best, that's Wilf McGuinness's business.
He dropped Bobby, he dropped Dennis, he dropped me, he dropped George, he dropped Paddy, he dropped everybody to make a point. He was infantile in his approach. And they had this, if you got caught with your hands in your pockets, you had to do 10 press-ups. It was cold, raining, muddy. We were all in tracksuits. And Bobby in his suit, we put his hands in his pocket. And Wilf said to him, "Oh, Bobby, you know the rules, 10 press-ups." And there was silence. And he did them. He did them. I think Wilf got sacked the day after.
At last night's meeting, when young Wilf's job of team manager was relinquished, the directors asked me if I'd go in and take over for the time being. Club is a thing, and in view of that, I just come in as a part-timer.
We won the European Cup in 1968. Everything since that seems to have been an anticlimax. Who do you blame? I would think it stems from the fact that United were on top for so long that unless you're in the position to recognise it and recognise that you need change, that you're going to fail.
I was 22. I wasn't going to reach my peak for another 7 or 8 years. And I listened to everyone talking about how this is it, we've achieved what we set out to achieve. And it seemed like they were talking as if it was all over. I was only starting club, which hurt me, you know, because Manchester United had been my whole life.
When I came out, I was going to enjoy a peaceful life and enjoy watching Manchester United play, but it hasn't been that way.
How much of a crisis is Manchester United in at the moment?
Well, everyone is struggling at the bottom of the league, have a crisis in their hands.
You feel the board can accept any blame at all?
I don't think so.
Lee pulled across for Law! Dennis has done it! And no elation there at all from Dennis Law. So that presumably is the end of the game and the end of Manchester United's 36 years unbroken run in the first division.
Was he though impossible to replace? I don't think anybody's impossible to replace, really. The person who takes over will have to be just equally as good, I'm afraid.
This must be an inhibiting effect on those who have tried to succeed you.
I can't understand that.
Applications are invited from managers with experience and proven ability.
It was always there, you know, this overpowering bearing on the place, you know, that they could never get away from. Until Alex.
Success it's positively demanded at Old Trafford, and the fact that it is now 20 seasons since Manchester United won the championship has ultimately cost Ron Atkinson his job.
The Scot becomes the sixth to try to follow Sir Matt Busby.
He's Lanarkshire, I'm from Govan. The difference.
We were 17-18 when the Busby Babe comparison started to come out.
It's the chance of a lifetime, a treble chance, the likes of which no English team has had before or may ever get again.
Sir Alex instilled into us what Sir Matt had in his teams. Entertaining football, getting the fans off their feet, for that working class mentality that even if you're having a bad game, you would always put a shift in.
Goal is coming up.
Peter Schmeichel is forward.
Can he score another in Europe? He's got one in Europe already.
Beckham. In towards Schmeichel. It's Comfort to White York. Cleared. Giggs with a shot. Sheringham! Is this their moment? Beckham. Into Sheringham. And Solskjaer has won it! Manchester United are the champions of Europe again, and nobody will ever win a European Cup final more dramatically than this. Oh, it'll all be rushing back to him now.
feel a sense of romance, wonder, mystery, sense of beauty, and a sense of poetry. Because on such occasions, the game is larger than life. It is something of the timeless, magical quality of legend.